Hello, welcome to another episode of History and Coffee. And today with this video, I'm gonna start a new series. It's not gonna be all in a row. I'm gonna kind of jump around a little bit, but I'm gonna be talking about uh, famous but kind of unheard of cases of mass civil unrest in American history. And I'm gonna start today with the 1985 move bombing. So, a lot of people have never even heard of this, and you'd think that the state police dropping satchel charges on a residential neighborhood in the middle of Philadelphia would be something that would kind of stand out, but it doesn't seem to be the case here. So, why did this happen? You know, where did it start? Well, we go back to the late '60s, early '70s, and this was sort of the golden age of radicalism in America. You got all these little splinter groups. This is when the Patty Hearst thing happened, which I'm going to talk about. A gentleman by the name of John Africa, and that wasn't his original name. I don't recall what it was, but he decided that he was going to sort of take a couple of the philosophies of the time and combine them. He, of course, believed he was a black revolutionary. He was an environmentalist, as well as a anti-government. Pretty much, take the '60s and sort of some of the standout radical politics and sort of combine them all together, and you get this group called Move. Um, Essentially, their beliefs were, um, you know, technology is evil, government is evil, and even the group name Move is it's not actually an acronym. It's a sort of a statement. One of his little catchphrases, and I'm paraphrasing, is that everything that's alive moves, and to stop moving and stagnate, you become dead and decay. Um, and these members would often greet each other as saying, on the move, basically. So they had this sort of somewhat radical agenda, but by nature peaceful. I mean, they sort of lived together in this uh, I guess you could call it a housing project. It was run by a social worker in Philadelphia, and he was sympathetic to this group's kind of ideals. So they grew in number and they get together. And the problem started is they would actively protest, which is not strange for the time. Now we're getting into sort of the mid '70s here. They were fond of uh, holding bullhorn demonstrations, and again, not something that's strange for the time, but the issue with these guys is and this is going to sound ridiculous for these days, but they used a lot of foul language when they'd protest. They'd go to zoos, they'd stand out in front of their building and just this tirade of obscenity about how technology is bad, the government's evil, so on and so forth. And this went on for a couple years, and people that lived near there started complaining. And of course, this is the 1970s, and it's a black radical group, so they already have a very large target painted on their back. So finally, the police department there in Philadelphia decides they're going to come in and essentially boot them out of their house. They went about getting warrants and things like that, and were able to get an order from the government to have them vacate this property because they've been disturbing the peace so much with their little bullhorn demonstrations. The police move in rather heavy-handedly, and one of the police officers is shot. Now, the interesting part about this is, of course, at the time they blamed the group and arrested something like 9 members and put them in prison. But later, when we re-examined this, most of the witnesses actually believe that this police officer was shot by his fellow officers in an accidental discharge when they were advancing on the building. So this is, you got these guys had the deck stacked against them. After all this calms down, the group relocates to a new building called Row House in southwest Philadelphia. And this time they're not taking any chances. When they move into this place, they start barricading this place. I mean, they build bunkers, they sandbag windows. They're not going to have these cops come in there and pin anything on them again. And they resume their normal sort of demonstrations and things. Again, peacefully, but loud and obnoxious. And so they draw the ire of the local law enforcement again. And in 1978, I'm sorry, the previous encounter happened in 78. So in the 1980s, the police go in again and they're going to kick them out of here again. And this time the move group knows what the score is. And now, who shot first in this occasion is lost to history, but when the police came in to serve the eviction notices and warrants, gunfire was exchanged. So you've got this group, which is armed with, pretty substantial weaponry, and you've got the state police, and the state police see what's going on here. This building is essentially a fortress, and it's filled with armed people who are not going to go quietly because they've already been screwed over multiple times by the government. They don't trust the government to begin with. So now the rational person would recognize this situation and think, well, naturally, in this case, the state police would de-escalate the situation. There's obviously going to be no winner here, so they need to back off and attempt to negotiate peacefully with this group. No. The state police drop bombs on this row house in the middle of a residential neighborhood in Philadelphia. The resulting explosions and fire kill 11 people, including 5 children. The fire from this spread, consumed a large chunk of the neighborhood. At one point it was a 6-alarm fire and they needed 60-something pieces of equipment to put it out. And you're talking about, there's been 2 airstrikes on civilian populace in the entire history of the United States of America. This one, and then in World War II, the U.S. Air Force was ordered to send B-17s in to bomb an ice jam in a town in Montana because the river was flooding. So why is this lost to history? I mean, that's kind of easy, because it's embarrassing. It makes the establishment look like shit. It makes the police look like shit. It makes the government look like shit. And in reality, they are shit for what they did. They murdered people. They destroyed their homes. And they did it because they did not have respect for the people they were dealing with. They had no desire to serve and protect. They bombed a residential neighborhood in the middle of Philadelphia. And so now there's a lot more, of course, to this story than I'm covering here. But honestly, there's really no way to come away from this not outraged. And you can sit there and say, oh, well, they were armed and but these are American citizens that are protected under the Bill of Rights. You don't drop satchel charges from helicopters on them because they don't want to come out quietly. That's not how this country was founded. That's not how it works. So any angle you look at this, outrage, disgust, and outright state-sanctioned murder of this move group. The members that did survive went on to continue on the traditions. Nobody was really ever held accountable for this. There was some investigation committees, and it floated around the news for a little bit, but nothing really ever came of it. eventually it just sort of died and fell out of memory. And you know, I hope that in watching this, you people do not allow this to fall out of memory, and you remember these people that were killed by their government that was supposed to protect them. So that's it for this episode. Next episode, I'm going to cover the Battle of Athens, which took place shortly after World War II. A group of World War II veterans took up arms against their corrupt local government, and it's actually a pretty cool story. So stand by for that one. I hope you enjoyed this.